Whoa, what was that? So it's actually been a few months now since I've last looked at this, and I've been trying to figure out why it's doing what it's doing and what's causing those symptoms. Now, these sort of problems are usually caused by either a sensor failure or a vacuum leak. Those are the two main sort of things that would cause something like this. But pretty much all the sensors on this are brand new, with the exception of the NOx sensor and the TPS. Now, I've tried the TPS from my other van and it makes no difference, so it's not that. And I don't see how the NOx sensor can have an effect on the fueling. The NOx sensor is to do with kind of ignition timing, really. It's nothing to do with fuel. The symptom that it's got is essentially on overrun, it's cutting off all the fuel. All the injectors, the engine just cuts off basically on overrun. So I don't think it's the injectors either, because again, they're all doing it together in unison. So I can't see that a faulty injector would cause that unless they're all faulty at exactly the same point in the rev range. It seems very unlikely to me. So I've been trying to work out and trying to think through what could be causing this. Now, the conclusion that I've come to is that I think it's still some sort of fuel starvation problem, because it's also really quite hesitant to start if it's been left cold for a little while. If I've left it sort of a day or so, it's really quite difficult to start. It's not like my other van at all. It's not like you'd expect a normal modern sequential fuel injected engine to be. Now, as I say, I've never had that on my other van. My other van starts absolutely fine every time, really. So I think there's still something to do with the fuel supply, and I think for some reason it's being cut off just when you lift off the throttle, just when it goes into overrun. Now, the only thing I think that could cause that would be the fuel pressure regulator, because that's vacuum driven. That's an old-fashioned one. It's vacuum driven off the inlet manifold. So when you lift off the throttle, essentially you're reducing the amount of vacuum that's being applied to it. So if it's either worn or it's got a split in it or something like that, maybe that's what's causing the issue. Maybe if that's that lift off on overrun, if that reduction in vacuum is causing it to close completely, that would cut all the fuel off, and then maybe it's taking a little while to recover essentially, and then once you sort of put your foot back on the throttle, it's fine again. And that's pretty much where I'm at the moment. I think that's the next thing to look at. Now, I've got a new one for it, so I'm going to try that, see if that makes any difference. Fingers crossed that's it, because I've spent an awful lot of time on this now and I'd really like to find the solution. The regulator is located on the underside of the inlet manifold, and it's one of the hardest things to get to on this engine. Surpassed only by the NOx sensor, I would say. There we go. Actually, you know what? I think I might be better off taking this inlet piece off. For those of you thinking I can't see what he's doing, well, don't worry, because I can't either. Entirely by feel, all this. Which is why I fitted it before I put the engine in the van. Fat lot of good that did me. Now I seem to remember that the third one I couldn't do with a socket. I had to get a spanner on it. All I can get is that onto the nut if I pull up on there, because otherwise that just hinges out of the way. I think with some mole grips on here I might then be able to turn it and then use the ratchet on that. Let's give that a go. That is ridiculously sloppy. No, it's not even turning to work right. Get the socket on there. What it's catching on is this pipe, which goes to the bottom, or the back side rather, of the idle control valve. So I might take that off, because that should give me a little bit more clearance. There we go. Yes, that's definitely helped. That's it. Just don't lose the bolt now. Not really under any pressure at all, which is not what I expected. But it has got fuel up there. And all that's holding it in now is the return hose back to the tank. Now I won't be reusing this piece of hose, but I do need the bracket, so it needs to come off. I might have to cut that, you know, that is on there. Yeah, I wasn't too impressed with this hose. It was sold as fuel grade, but it's already starting to perish, and that's without putting E10 to it either. And I need to save these two rubber pieces, as the new regulator doesn't come with them. And with that cut to length, I can offer it back up to the van. It's like two different people were involved in making this. One decided where to put the fuel regulator, and one decided where to put the hose outlet for the idle valve. It just literally wanted to be about 5mm over that way, would have been fine, absolutely fine. Right, just been out on the road again and it's made absolutely no difference at all. Right, well that was a complete waste of time then. Still, you mustn't dwell on your mistakes, you must learn from them and move on. So it turns out I'm a complete idiot. Back in part 7 I said this. The goal here when adjusting it is to reduce the amount of slack between the arm on the throttle body and the arm on the sensor to be as little as possible without going too far and rotating the sensor. Yeah, so it turns out that's not actually what you're supposed to do. They need specifically calibrating. So let's give that a go because that could well be the problem. Now I couldn't find any data available for this. Normally you're looking for either a resistance or a voltage measurement, but I couldn't find either for this one. And given that I'd already tried the one from my other van, there's a good chance that that's now out of calibration too. Luckily my dad also has the 2.2 engine in his van, and as far as I know the TPS on that's never been touched. So I measured the resistance at idle between pins 1 and 2 and it showed 2.3 ohms. So let's see what this is showing. Yeah, just over 2 ohms here, so that is a little low. Now this is very fiddly and the slightest movement one way or the other had a fairly big effect, so although it's 0.01 of an ohm out, I'm still calling that a win. There's usually a tolerance allowed with these sensors, and although admittedly it could be right up one end of that, hopefully 2.3 will be somewhere in the middle, so a slight deviation won't matter. Right, let's give it a go. Sounds pretty good. That's pretty stable, that idle. It's a little bit splashy still, but that could be worn injectors. It's definitely not hunting like it was before, it's not going up and down. Right, let's try it on the road. Just getting into town now, I'm in 4th, we're doing 30, I'm just going to try and ease off. Yeah, look at that, that's fine. That's what it was. It was that throttle sensor, that's what it was. Get a bit more speed up. Just ease off again. Yeah, look at that. That's it, problem solved. Right, let's get back to the workshop. Now that's the major issue sorted, but I'm not going to celebrate just yet, as there's still a few more things that need looking at. And at the top of that list are the reversing lights. Now these were working before with the old engine, and indeed they did work initially with the new one. But they started sporadically playing up, and now they stopped altogether, so I need to take a look, as of course this would be an MOT failure. Now as I haven't touched any of the rest of the system, the main culprit that springs to mind is the reversing switch, which is located in the gearbox. This has of course now changed, so there's no guarantee that this switch is any good. To test it, I've left the box in reverse, so the switch should now be showing continuity. So if I don't get a beep here, then I know it's at fault. And I'll just prove the meter again to make sure. Yeah, so it's definitely the switch at fault. Now there's probably a special Renault tool for these, or even an extra long reach socket might have done, but I don't have either here, so a slightly slimmed down ring spanner will have to do. This is the one from the original gearbox, as I know that was in working order. Right, let's try it again. Hey, that's more like it. Next on the list is the petrol gauge. Now I'm not sure what's wrong, but it didn't actually work before, so this time it's not a fault of my own making. Although that doesn't necessarily mean I haven't made it worse, of course. The most common cause for this is an issue with the sender unit. Now I did swap this out and I can't remember the history of this one, so it is possible it's faulty, but if I'm lucky it'll just be corrosion on the plug. That's usually the most common cause, so I'm going to start by cleaning the pins with some emery paper. Hey, look at that! Excellent. The next thing I want to look at is the plug on one of the coolant sensors. It's partly cracked and now the wire clip has pinged off, so it has a tendency to work loose. It's a standard Bosch plug and I've got another one from an old Rover V8 loom which should match nicely. Nice. The TPS connector also has a bit of damage. You can see the retaining clip on the engine side has broken off in the past, so it's only the seal keeping it from coming loose. Now these connectors aren't as easy to take apart as the Bosch ones, and I haven't got the correct pin removal tool for these, so I'm going to have to crimp on some new terminals as well. That's no bad thing though, because one of the wires does have a bit of damage to the insulation anyway. Ugh, I hate doing that. By pulling some slack on the sleeve, I can cut a short piece of it off to allow enough room for the new crimps. There's plenty of length here anyway, so it won't cause any issues. Now you should really fit these seals before crimping on the terminals, but as usual I forgot, so I'll have to slide them over the whole thing. They are very flexible though, so it's not too bad. Now eagle-eyed viewers will spot that this plug is the same as the one on the lambda sensor. And since changing that I have now managed to source the correct connector. Which is nice. And all that remains is to push the seals home with a small screwdriver. I'm not really sure what that clip part actually does. The pins are held inside separately, so it must just be for protection. That's better. Well, save for a few little bits which are far too boring to film, I think that's pretty much it for this series. It's not been the easiest of engine swaps, but it's all turned out fine in the end. This is by no means it for this van though. I've got lots more things planned for it in the future, as well as my two other Trafics, so I've got plenty of content in the pipeline. So a massive thank you to everyone who's watched, subscribed and commented, and I'll see you next time. Oh no, the pickup's different. Bother. I genuinely can't believe how easy that went. That could have... I genuinely can't believe how easy that went. That could have been... It's not going to be that easy to integrate this loom with the engine. There's quite a bit that isn't, unfortunately. Integrating it with the hard part is going to be making this loom work with the wiring that's in the edge. Now, the symptoms... I've just been out on the road, and again, it's made no... Yeah, turns out they need calibrating. No. Right, let's give it a go.